Back on the Young Turks. Now we're going to have an interesting conversation with John Nichols of The Nation magazine about his piece called The Whiner in Chief, referring to Barack Obama. Uh-oh. No, you didn't, John. Yes, you did. All right. John, let me say it right up front that I disagree with your premise. So,
that's okay.
So we're going to have an interesting conversation. So, but I want you to lay out the case why you think the Obama White House made a mistake in going after Fox News Channel.
Well, I don't think they made a mistake going after Fox. That's fine to do. But what they made a mistake was saying that the president wouldn't appear on Fox. It makes the most articulate, fast on his feet president, perhaps in modern times, look like a wimp, look like a guy who's just not up to it, not ready to go out and do the tough gigs. Fox, whether you like him or not, has set itself up as a powerful, forceful network that a lot of people watch, and it's taken seriously. Obama should appear on it. In fact, he should go out of his way to appear on it. This president's way too cloistered. They're keeping him back from the people too much. He would benefit tremendously by going out and sitting down with a Chris Wallace or even a Bill O'Reilly.
All right. Now, I think, though, that even in your statement, they're accomplishing the mission that they set out to do, which is to brand Fox News Channel as not real news, but conservative propaganda. Now, you and I might think that's obvious, but the problem is the rest of the press does not think it's obvious. They treat them as if they're a legitimate news organization. So even when Fox says, hey, you know what, if you were a real tough guy, you'd come on to talk with the opposition. Well, aren't they falling into his trap of saying, yes, we are the opposition and we're not real news?
Well, exactly, and that's fine. And let me give you a good example of what I mean and why I think, again, I think Obama is being far too old media, old school in how he does stuff. Long ago, back in the 80s, early 90s, there was a magazine in Britain called Marxism Today, very left-wing. It was a Marxist magazine. But they did a terrific job of covering things. And several members of Margaret Thatcher's cabinet sat down for lengthy interviews with Marxism Today. I mean, these are Thatcherites, right-wingers in the extreme. And they did it because they thought, we're smart enough to do this. And they got a relatively respectful treatment and came out looking better for it. I just believe that Barack Obama, and I think his press team, and I'm going to use the French term for this, sucks. I think they're lousy at it. And let me tell you why they're lousy at it. This is a guy who won the biggest mandate any Democrat's gotten since Lyndon Johnson in 1964. He's got the best congressional majorities that any Democrat has had in, better part of a generation. And yet he's essentially been boxed in. Now, do we really think he's been boxed in by a couple of tea parties in August and Glenn Beck? I don't. I think his press operation's failing him. And I think that this declaration of war, quote unquote, with Fox is a very classic example of the failure.
Yeah, I disagree with you that, I agree with you that the team is lousy. I disagree with you that this new gambit is the wrong way to go. I think it's the first right thing that they have done.
Well, it may be, I'm willing to be wrong on this. I'd be delighted to. I want this guy to hit his mark. I think he's he's boxing, way below his weight right now.
John, let me sort of address two of those issues that are brought up then. Mm-hmm. Look, one of the ways that a president uses his weight, if you will, is by giving access or not giving access. Now, George Bush did this all the time in his White House, and it was very effective. And, they scared real reporters from huge magazines by saying, look, you don't play ball, you lose access to the White House, and then how are you going to do your stories, mm-hmm. right? So now Obama is using his weight and his access to say to Fox News, well, at least this is one chip that I can play, so I'm going to play it. So I think that makes sense.
I'm sorry. Something tells me that when we write the history of this period, that we're going to feel better about ourselves if we're not saying we lived up to the George Bush standard.
No, but politically, you got to see what he did right and what he did wrong.
Yeah, but with all due respect, what he did right and what he did wrong. what he did right was have September 11th happen on his time.
And then use that
Yeah,
as
they
a
used
club to
and
intimidate
you know what?
the press.
We savaged them as being morally and politically irresponsible, just horrible players, and they were. And I'm just.
But there's hardball here being played, John. The other side is not going to play by your rules, and what they do is they swift boat them on every issue, and
No
they
doubt.
have Acorn, Van Jones, death panels, and the list goes on and on.
What
And
if
I
he
think
went
if
on
they
Fox
don't
and-
strike
what if-
back, and if they don't fight back against Fox, and they don't wage this war, they're going to get John carried on every issue. They
What-
have to point out these are the bad guys. They're trying to lead you astray.
What if he'd gone on Fox and said that? Just what you just said.
You know,
What if he
look,
said, this is ridiculous. Come on,
John,
let's talk
I think
about
the main source of disagreement for me is this: is not going on Fox or not going on Fox. I don't think that that's a big part of the issue. The real issue is, do you fight or don't you fight? And so now they have engaged in that fight. Now you can question the tactics, and if you say he should go on Fox after a period of time and then come on and do an interview with him, I actually don't disagree with you on that. But as far as should he take them on, now the rest of the press is saying, oh no, how could you do this to poor Fox? And this is bad because you're going after the press. They're not the press. They're propaganda.
Well, look, you see, this is where you and I may have a fundamental disagreement. And for what it's worth, and I don't claim any great expertise on this, but I've written a number of books on the history of media. And my view is that the media in the United States has always been partisan. That I think it's a fantasy to suggest that there's ever been some sort of perfect media that got it exactly right and walked down the middle. And Richard Nixon thought the New York Times and the Washington Post were radical left-wing publications that were out to get him. And Bill Clinton is a story. I was talking the other day to a historian who had written some quite a bit of stuff about Lyndon Johnson, Robert Caro, and he was telling this story about when he met Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton said, "Wouldn't you agree? I've been treated worse by the media than any president in history." And Clinton was obsessed with how the media had treated him and thought the New York Times and other people were terrible to him. Presidents always think they're getting beat up by the media, and it may be true. But as a small d Democrat, I'm in favor of that. I think presidents should be beaten up by the media.
No, I agree with you, John.
And I just think Obama. Just to finish the point, and then because I think your points are. We don't have a lot of disagreement here, but I think Obama is masterful, and I just don't think he benefits by keeping that mastery solely for people that treat him respectfully.
We're talking to John Nichols of The Nation, and he wrote a piece called The Whiner in Chief. And by the way, in that article, John also talks about how, the Obama White House saying that the bloggers are left fringe guys sitting in their pajamas is a terrible idea. And the reason I'm not addressing it is because I 100% agree with you. So that's an easy part of this conversation.
And there's no reason for us to sit here and go, yeah, you're so smart.
Right, exactly. So now, look, I don't want you to get me wrong. Should Fox News exist? Of course! Okay, it's a free country. And I understand the history of the press and how partisan it's been in the past. You make good points about how they treated Jefferson and Adams, and the list goes on, and it was much worse back in the day. But here's what I think we should do. We should break it down into categories. There are opinion shows, like this show, like Oberman, like O'Reilly, Hannity, etc., and they should be labeled opinion shows. Then there is partisan press, which is Fox News and The Nation, if you ask me. Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's truth in that.
Right, and then there's a third category, which I think is straight news. Now, CNN, I think, botches it left and right, but at least they give it a shot, and I think that they're straight news. So my proposal is, one, we have an understanding of this, which apparently the press doesn't have an understanding of it, and they're grabbing in the dark for what they think they are and they don't seem to have this understanding. And then, secondly, here's the deal that I would strike. If I'm Obama, I'd say, you know what, I'm perfectly happy to go on Fox. The minute they agree that they are partisan press, and there's nothing wrong with partisan press, but as soon as they say, yes, even our news has a conservative perspective, then I say, okay, then I'll come on and talk to you about your perspective.
You know what? I like that. That is not a bad gig, because, of course, if he were to come and talk to the nation, right, there would be an acknowledgement up front. He's coming to talk to a publication with a left perspective.
Right.
Similarly, if he was going to go talk to National Review, which frankly I think he should, he would be, obviously going with a publication that acknowledges a right wing or right perspective. And I think we can take that into television. I think we can say fairly at this point, without much question, Fox News has a conservative perspective. MSNBC, certainly in the evening, has a liberal perspective, right? And these are not, and I actually think that's healthy. That's the point at which we start to get beyond a lot of the gamesmanship of media. And one of the things is, look, the New York Times is a liberal newspaper. It is, and that's fine. That's good. And you know what else? The Orange County Register is a conservative newspaper, maybe a libertarian newspaper. The truth is, we can identify most media for what it is.
I would just make a small note on that. Mm-hmm. I think the New York Times might appear to be liberal, and the Wall Street Journal might appear to be conservative. But I would not put either one of them in the partisan press category.
I agree with you on the news side.
Right.
I think that the news side of the Wall Street Journal is, I think it's necessary reading. And I think they cover business honestly. I think the news side of the New York Times, by and large, tries very, very hard to be straight. I agree with you. And similarly with Associated Press and folks like that. That's, interestingly enough, the reason that Limbaugh and, to an extent, O'Reilly spend so much of their time, and I don't know if you've noticed this, attacking Associated Press. They hate Associated Press, which really does try harder to run it down the middle than any other media. They hate it because, of course, this goes back to Reagan. Reagan was the guy who started the notion of really attacking the press in general, because if people believed the press was credible, then when the press called him out as a liar, he'd be in trouble.
Yes.
And so there's deep roots to this, and I think your perspective, though, is not a bad one. This notion of, okay, I'll go on Fox if you acknowledge that you're a conservative network. I think if that is what Dunn, the press operative from the White House, had said, says we'll go on Fox as soon as they acknowledge this, that'd be great.
All right.
But saying that they're an arm of the Republican Party and that's why we don't go on them, that game, it may in fact be true, but it is I think it's a loser at the end of the day.
Right.
Doesn't look strong.
So we agree to disagree on that, because I think that starting that fight and starting that conversation is very, very important. So I think it's still a right strategy, if not perfectly executed. And the only thing I would add to this conversation is he should have a second rule, which is I'll go on Fox News Channel right after I go on the Young Turks.
Well,
so,
hey, you know what? But you bring up a super important point. Maybe I know we're running down on time here, but that is such an important point, because I think Obama has neglected the progressive media severely. And, Ronald Reagan would not have done that. Ronald Reagan went and spoke at dinners for National Review and Human Events, and he made himself regularly available to the media that brought he danced with them that brung him, and Obama should dance with them that brung him more,
and
including the Young Turks.
I obviously have self-interest there, but that's
why. True, though.
But that's why it drove me crazy when he gave Smirkonish an interview, thereby legitimizing him and giving a conservative guy an interview. And then all of a sudden, articles started coming out about how Smirkonish was moderate, when I don't think he's moderate at all.
No, he's not. He's
right.
a conservative.
So so why are you going and rewarding those guys when you should be all over the Rachel Maddow program, et cetera, et cetera?
No, that's and I think that is and I may write that one next, because again, I'm a student of media history and of Reagan. I think Reagan was brilliant at how he did media, and he did appear on and talk with media that disagreed with him and that was tough on him at times. But 90% of his appearances and so much of his energy went into sustaining the media that had brought him up politically.
All right.
And Obama should be doing the same.
John Nichols from The Nation, thanks so much for joining us. A really interesting conversation.
It is always a pleasure being on with you, brother. I listen to you as much as I can.
Thank you, John. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
man.
All right. We'll come right back on the Young Turks.